Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here to take a first look at a lens that I know a lot of you have been really excited about, and myself included, because this represents the very first Tamron lens that has been designed from the ground up for Sony FE. And so back when I first talked about this lens during the WPPI convention in February, I was very interested in this approach as opposed to Sigma's. I'm excited about the fact that the Sigma Art Series lenses are being retrofitted for Sony FE. The downside to the Sigma approach is that they are basically the same size, in some cases even a bit larger and heavier. And so as a result, they're not going to be as natural a fit in terms of the balance and the size on Sony FE. Tamron obviously elected to release far fewer lenses. This is the only one at this point. However, it does provide something that has been, frankly, fairly lacking on Sony systems, and that is quality lenses at more reasonable price points. Some of Sony's very best lenses are some of the very best lenses at their particular focal length. And it's my hope that before this review period is out, I will be able to get in a Sony 24-70mm f2.8 G Master lens to benchmark this against. But, of course, the significant difference is that the G Master lens in the US market runs at about $2,200. This Tamron lens is being released at $800, and so obviously a hugely different price point. In fact, even the Sony lens that has only an f4 maximum aperture, it comes in at about $1,100, and so this certainly is a very appealing price point and provides the option for Sony shooters to get a lens that, while it doesn't cover the same focal length identically, it covers it similarly with a same kind of maximum aperture. And so byproduct of that is that it's going to be a really compelling option for those that are maybe moving into the Sony system and are looking for a general purpose quality zoom, but aren't interested in paying massive amounts of money. In the case of the G Master lens, I've got this mounted on a Sony a7 III. Well, the G Master lens costs more than what the a7 III does. And so maybe you're just a new a7 III purchaser, for example, and you're not interested in laying out that kind of cash. Well, this new Tamron lens may just be a great option for you. Now, we'll be looking, of course, more at the image quality in a future episode, and so stay tuned for that. But the Tamron does offer up a number of unique things. So let's just detail some of those today. First of all, while this is not being labeled as an SP lens or super performance lens, which is kind of Tamron's premium line, at the same time, I don't think that this is being released, and I don't, they may handle, Canon, Nikon lenses and Sony mount lenses differently. But this does seem to have a lot of the similar design elements to, say, the G2 lenses, in that, rather than the engineered plastics, this is a metal barrel, and it seems like a lightweight aluminum like their others. The finish seems to be maybe just slightly more matte finish than what the kind of semi-gloss finish on some of the SP primes. But the image, or the lens itself, construction-wise, is very, very nice. And you have got very nice feeling rings, and of course, as all of these mirrorless lenses, this is the Magnification ring. It needs an electronic coupling to move anything, and so it'll just spin otherwise. But it feels nice, it moves nice, and the focus ring is nice and wide. The barrel extension is quite smooth, not the absolute smoothest that I've seen, but close. It moves very, very nicely, and you've got just a single inner barrel. There's no sense of wobble there at all, and so everything on the lens itself seems nice and tight. As a lot of recent Tamron lenses, it is designed in Japan, but its actual manufacturing is at Tamron's plant in China. And I think you'll see a lot of, future lenses like this. And in other places, it seems like a lot of lens makers, camera makers are diversifying and producing, their products at factories that they have created in different countries. For example, the a7 III is also made at Sony's Chinese plant. And so, anyway, that's the nature of globalism in the world in which we live. And so as you can see, there is a very mild amount of barrel extension with the zoom. The size, it's actually quite moderate and good. In terms of the front diameter, it terminates in a 67mm front filter thread, nice and common, easy to find. The lens itself is only 2.87 inches in diameter, or 73mm. And the length, it's kind of a long, slender lens. You can see the profile here is 4.64 inches or 117.8 millimeters. The weight is a nice and moderate 1.21 pounds or 550 grams, making it a very nice balance on these A7 series bodies. And so that compares favorably to, say, the G Master lens, which is closer to 2 pounds, 886 grams. And so it is more than 50% heavier. It's also longer in terms, comparison of 117.8 millimeters here, 136 millimeters in length for the G Master lens, which, by the way, makes it one of the physically largest 24 to 70 millimeter f2.8 zooms out there. And so it's a much more moderately sized lens, even though it also has f2.8 constant maximum aperture. Now, Sony's f4 lens is a little bit smaller than what the Tamron lens is. It is under 100 millimeters in length, 94.5. It has the exact same diameter, 67mm front filter thread. The G Master lens has an 82mm front filter thread. And the weight of the Sony f4 lens is 94.5 millimeters. And so, it's a little bit more compact, and the weight is 426 grams, so it's a little bit lighter. I think Tamron has done a nice job of kind of straddling the difference, and they have given us a lens that is well built, while at the same time is not excessively large. Now, a few more things about that build itself. This is a fully weather-sealed lens, which is something that Tamron has really taken to heart, and I'm very happy about because, it's important. It adds to the versatility of the lens. And so it not only has a gasket here at the lens mount, which, has their kind of new signature luminous gold accent ring, which looks nice here. I like the actual width of it and how it looks there. But also on the front, there are internal seals throughout the lens itself, and then on the front, there is a flooring coating that not only helps to resist moisture, collecting on that and helps to complete the sealing, but it also makes it much easier to clean because it is very resistant to things like smudges, fingerprints, oil, etc. And so, very positive there. There are no switches or otherwise dials on the lens itself. I mean, you have the rings and that is it. And so in terms of turning off autofocus and manual, switching to manual focus, that's going to have to be done within the body. However, the lens is compatible with all focus modes, including DMF. And so, like other lenses in DMF, that if you start to focus using the focus ring, it will automatically magnify the image. And so that's certainly a nice feature there. In terms of the autofocus itself, and I'll talk more about this later on, but it is incredibly, incredibly silent. I mean, in operation, you really cannot hear it at all. It has a new focus motor that I've never seen from Tamron before, obviously something they've been developing specifically for Sony FE. They call it RXD, which stands for Rapid Extra Silent Stepping Drive. And so RXD is much the preferable way to speak. So it's a stepping motor, not surprisingly. That's kind of the format that a lot of mirrorless lenses are. But it's a great application here in that it is incredibly silent. It is also very, very fast. And so you make focus switches very, very quickly and completely silently. And so, for a first kick at the can for autofocus motor in this, I think Tamron has done a great job from what I've seen so far. And that will also make it a very compelling video option. So far from what I've seen, IAF works very, very well. Face tracking, all of those kind of things works very well. So lots of positives there. Now, there is a few unique things about this lens that might be interesting to you. Of course, it doesn't start at 28 millimeters, or excuse me, 24 millimeters, it starts at 28 millimeters. So that is a mild downside in that for some applications, it's not going to go quite as wide as what you might like. The compensation is you get an extra 5 millimeters of reach on the long end, which might make it a slightly more compelling option for portraiture as a byproduct of that. Now, what's very interesting about this lens is you actually have two different minimum focus distances and two different maximum magnification figures. Now, most lenses, you get your maximum magnification always on the telephoto end. In this case, however, you actually, while you did get a class-leading magnification level when it comes to these, the Sony alternatives at the telephoto end, you can focus down there to 0.39 meters or 15.4 inches, which is right in the same, ballpark as the Sony lenses. But there you get a 0.25 times magnification due to a slightly longer focal length. And that compares to a 0.24 times for the GM lens, and for the f4 lens, it has a lower 0.20 times magnification. But where things get interesting is actually on the wide end, where you can focus down extremely close, down to only 19 centimeters or about 7.5 inches, and you actually have a magnification of 0.34 times at that point. And so it actually gives you two different framing options. In one case, you have a full 1/3 life-size magnification with a wider framing, and so it's going to give you some interesting options there. But then, of course, if you move to the telephoto end, you get a 1:4 magnification, which is still very useful, but of course with a little more, much more narrow angle of view, and thus a more compressed background, less storytelling, more about just highlighting a subject. And so I like that. I am thinking about, as a wedding photographer, for example, and the different options that might give you in shooting, say things like, the bridal setup, rings, shoes, flowers. It gives you just some different alternatives for framing all of that. And so I think that that's really an interesting application here of this. It is a fairly complex lens, 15 elements in 12 groups. However, that is less complex than the 18 elements in 13 groups for the G Master lens. It has 9 rounded aperture blades and, of course, has a constant f2.8 maximum aperture throughout the focal range. Now, it does not include any kind of OSS, optical steady shot, or image stabilization. Of course, neither does the G Master lens. That's compensated for by the fact that if you're shooting, with one of the more recent Sony bodies, you have in-body image stabilization, and so you're already kind of ahead of the curve when it comes to that. All in all, everything that I have done so far, the lens seems to work just as I hoped that it would. Autofocus is great. Image quality looks very, very good from early shots. And so I think that this is going to be a very compelling alternative for those of you that have a smaller budget or would prefer to use what budget you have to maybe purchase multiple lenses. And so I think it's going to be great when it comes to that. So stay tuned as I begin to cover the optical performance a little bit more. I'm going to be waiting a week or so to see if I can possibly get in that G Master lens to set that up as a, more of a benchmark comparison. But either way, I will be releasing optical results to you in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned. In the meantime, check back regularly to the image gallery. You can find a link in the description down below, and you can see the images that I am adding there. I'm going to be shooting on the A7 III and the A7R III, and just seeing what we come up with there. But so far, things look promising here. You can also there find buying links, and this is a very competitively priced lens, so certainly worth putting a pre-order in on right now. And of course, you can also find the typical links there to become a patron, to follow me on social media, sign up for my newsletter, and of course, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.